Star Wars ships are fast. No one can deny that. But how fast are they exactly? Well, that's a question I hope to answer today. Now, quick warning, it's going to be a very mathy episode today, unlike anything I've done before. So I just wanted to make sure that you all knew what you were getting into. And yeah, I would be honored if you would join us on today's episode of Star Wars Nerds and Geeks. Speed, Star Wars Ships. I got this really cool book called Battles for the Galaxy, which tells me the, not necessarily speed, but it gives me a way to figure out the speed. It doesn't tell me the speed, it tells me the acceleration of ships. And it tells me that in G-force. So G-force is the amount of gravity you're experiencing. 1 G-force, is equal to the gravity of Earth. Pretend that is Earth and pretend I am a good artist. 2G is equal to 2 times the gravity of Earth. So if you're experiencing 2G, it would feel like your body weighs twice as much because you're experiencing twice the amount of gravity that you normally experience. So to increase your G-force, there are 2 things that you can do. Number 1 is to increase your acceleration. Number 2 is to increase your gravity. So acceleration and gravity affect G-force. Let's erase all that and talk more about G-force to give you a little bit of an idea about it. So on a roller coaster, you experience roughly 5G. That's probably the most you ever experience on a roller coaster. The most a normal human can withstand is 9G. And the most any human has ever withstood is 46G. So, with these numbers in mind, let's look at the book. And I found that the max speed in the book, 5,200 G. That's a massive number. No human's able to experience 5,200 G and live to tell the tale. So instead, what I think this means is the ship is able to protect you from 5,200 G. So if the ship's able to protect you from 5,200 G, then that means that once it hits 5,200 G, you should probably start slowing down, deaccelerate to make sure that you don't exceed whatever the G-force limit of your ship is. Alright, so G-force is based around gravity. So in Star Wars, I'm going to use Coruscant's gravity because Coruscant seems to be the center of everything. It is used for a lot of time measurements, the standard time of a day, standard time of a year. It's used for it's the center of many navigation maps. So Coruscant seems to be the thing that everything's based around. So on Wikipedia it says that the radius is 6,120 kilometers. Okay, good. And then the mass, I never found the mass, but I used Earth's mass, and I used the ratio of Earth's mass to kilometers to figure out the mass of Coruscant, which probably isn't the most accurate way to find out, but I mean, it's the best I could do, and I feel like I got an alright number. 5.736 times 10 to the 24th kilograms. So that's the mass of Coruscant. And then I was able to figure out the gravity of Coruscant. Gravity is equal to a gravitational constant times the mass divided by the radius squared. And if I plug all my numbers in, I end up getting a gravity of 10.22 meters a second squared. I was not able to fit that at all. 10.22 meters a second squared, which I think is pretty accurate because Earth's gravity is 9.81 meters a second squared. And those two are close enough that I feel like, yeah, 10.22, it makes sense. But a TIE fighter is not going to be experiencing 10.22 meters a second squared gravity because it's not flying on under the atmosphere of Coruscant. It's flying in space. So now I have to figure out, here's Coruscant and here's our TIE fighter. How much gravity is he experiencing? Well, I'm going to turn to Earth once again to figure this out. Earth, the moon, is 238,900 miles away, which is pretty far for our standards, but I feel like in Star Wars that's actually really close. So I quadrupled that and rounded up to get 1 million miles. So that's how far away I'm saying that the average ship is from a planet as it's doing its ship things, whether that's like fighting a space battle or spinning around in circles because they feel like it or whatever. I'm saying 1 million miles away from the planet. That's about how far they are. So now I have to figure out how much gravity are you experiencing. Yeah, so I use 1 million miles to make my new radius. And again, g is equal to gravitational constant, mass, radius squared. And I end up getting the new mass, or the new gravity, of an extremely low number, 7.91 times 10 to the negative fourth meters squared. Meters per second squared. So that's a really, really low gravity. But I mean, it makes sense. You're 1 million miles away from the planet. You're not going to have that much gravity experienced on you. So I take this number, and I can use that to figure out, I can use this number, the gravity, along with the g-force, to figure out the acceleration. I really butchered all of those words. G-force is equal to acceleration divided by gravity, or acceleration, which we want to find out, is equal to force times gravity. So now I am able to figure out the acceleration of a ship, which isn't speed, but it brings us one step closer to speed. So first let's do g-force. I'm going to do the max g-force that a ship can do in Star Wars, or the most g-force I saw a ship was able to take, 5,200. Then I multiply that by gravity. Gravity isn't 7.91 times 10 to the negative fourth meter squared, which I thought it was, but it's not. It's actually, and I'm pretty sure this is what it is because that's what makes sense to me. But if any of you out there know better, please tell me. 7.91 times 10 to the negative fourth meters second squared. Divide that by the gravity of Earth, 9.81 meters a second squared. And I divide by Earth, the gravity of Earth, because g-force is based off of the gravity of Earth. So again, I think that's right, and it makes sense. But if I'm wrong, and some of you guys know it, I'd be really appreciative if you could tell me. But anyways, if I am right, then this equation ends up giving me, let's erase all of this, the massive acceleration, 64,480,000 meters a second squared. So then, yeah, that's a pretty fast speed. So this doesn't help us that much because it's only acceleration. Acceleration is how much faster you're getting over time. So this means that if you start from 0, 1 second later you'll be at 64 million meters a second, and then a second later you'll double that to 128 million meters a second, and it'll just go on and on and on until it ends up stopping. So I need to figure out where it stops. To figure out where it stops, I need to make a max speed. So max speed, that I'm going to base this off of the speed of thought, which is 150 milliseconds. In other words, if I touch let's say I touch a really hot stove, and it will take my finger, from the time my finger senses that the stove is hot, My finger senses it. It sends the information to my brain. My brain registers that and sends the information back to my finger and tells it to remove itself. So from the time I touch the stove to the time I remove that, that's 150 milliseconds. So 150 milliseconds is the quickest you can respond to something. So I'm going to use that to figure out how fast can you realistically go and still be able to avoid obstacles. So I ended up landing on the number 150 million meters a second as the fastest you could ever go, which lends you to about 22,500,000 meters in 150 milliseconds. So that means in 150 milliseconds, you're going 22 million meters, which is a lot, but in space, you're able to see so far that it's not terribly much. So if there's something that's 22 million meters ahead of you, you're able to get out of its way just in time. Which, I mean, it is the maximum speed. It's not like everyone's going this fast. But anyways, 150 milliseconds as our max speed. And so now I needed to figure out how long it takes you to reach 150 milliseconds, or 150 meters a second. So I divide this by 64,480, and that gives me a time of 2.32 seconds. So it takes me 2.32 seconds to get to my maximum speed from 0. So that will end up becoming that will help me make my constant. So I get the equation, your speed, I'll just say your speed is S, is equal to g-force times 12,400, which is the coruscant gravity out in space divided by Earth's gravity, and then multiply that by 2.32 seconds. And I end up creating this into a constant, and that constant is 28,768. So this is the number that I need to multiply g-force by. So g-force multiplied by that gives me the speed of any ship in Star Wars. Just give me the g-force, you multiply it by that, you get the speed. Simple, right? It's really nice because spreadsheets are amazing. I was able to plug this equation into spreadsheets and create this list of just every single ship, and I put in their g-force, and it would automatically calculate their speed in meters a second, miles per hour, and kilometers per hour. So that's actually really amazing. So let's talk about the X-Wing, for example. The X-Wing can go 3,700 G. I multiply that by my constant of 28,768, and I end up getting a speed of 106,441,600 meters a second, which is roughly 238 million miles per hour, or 383 million kilometers per hour. That's pretty fast, isn't it? At first, I didn't think so. It's fast, of course, but, I mean, this is Star Wars. Of course, they're going really fast. But then I found Wikipedia, and Wikipedia actually has information on ships and how fast they are. So, Wikipedia says the speed of ships is measured by megalight speed. And megalight speed is equal to 299.79 meters a second, which is 1/millionth of the speed of light. Hence, megalight. That's mega. That was a bad joke. And so they took, let's say the X-Wing. X-Wing can go 100 megalight, multiply that by our constant to get rid of megalight, and we end up getting the speed of 29,979 meters a second, which is a lot different number than 106 million meters per second. See the difference? 106 million versus 29,000. Yeah, that's a big difference. Well, anyways, 100 and it's all that beside, it just means that I messed up. And I need to fix my mistake because I said that the ships are going way faster than they should have. So to do this, I fixed my maximum speed that a ship can go. Remember, at first, I said that the max speed was 150 million meters per second. That is absurdly fast. We don't want to go that fast. So I ended up lowering it all the way down to 40,000 meters a second, which, it's a big difference from 150 million. But I took 40,000 meters a second and I divided that by 64 for 80,000, which, remember, that was the acceleration. So I figured out, I used that, I did 64 or 80, 1, 2, 3, divided by 40,000 to figure out the time it took going that acceleration to get to that speed, 0.00062 seconds. That's how long it takes me to get to that speed. So it's a relatively short span of time to get there. And I use this to create my new constant to multiply by. Remember this, it's the speed is equal to g-force times the amount of seconds it takes times 12,400. So I plug in that for seconds, and I end up creating the constant of, this one is, give me a sec, I need to find it. Where'd it go? 7.688. So g-force times that is equal to our speed. Let's remember, the reality is, let's actually change colors. Reality of an X-wing. Reality, we'll do that in green. The reality is roughly 29,000 meters a second. If I use this newfound formula, if I use the new constant and multiply to figure out the speed of an X-wing, I get roughly 28,000 meters a second. So these are a lot closer than my absurdly high number of, what was it, like 106 million? Yeah, that was way too high. No, this one is much closer. So, like I said, spreadsheets were a big part of this, and so I actually put a link to the spreadsheets in the description so you can go to them and play around with them and make your own speeds or see how it all works or whatever you want, really. I put that there just so you guys can all have fun with it. And if you know how to use spreadsheets, then you can toy with it and manipulate it to however you want. And if you don't know how to use spreadsheets, there's a few places where it allows you to put in your own little input, and you just need to put it in the first little box and then it'll fill in every other information. So that's how fast ships are. It's pretty fast, huh? I just wanted to quickly say that this relied a lot on the numbers of Star Wars and them being accurate and whatnot. And the thing about Star Wars is that it's always been looks over accuracy. And by that I mean that Star Wars has always been about making things look cool and making them look good rather than making them accurate and scientifically possible and whatnot. So the numbers could be off, and that's what makes math episodes like this really hard, because the numbers aren't always going to be the most accurate. However, overall, it makes Star Wars a lot more enjoyable because it doesn't try to stick to the facts as much. But, of course, this is Star Wars Nerds and Geeks signing off. See you all next time.